Hi guys, I'm Sergio.
And I'm Stroll.
And this is Racing Point. Welcome back to another track comparison, and obviously I'm not Sergio.
And I'm not Stroll.
Or you could have gone Lance.
Okay, I'm not Lance. Or Stroll. Or
No.
Lance Stroll.
This is thanks to Kids Love F1 in the comment section below on our last track comparison video, because everyone around the Racing Point release was making a bit of fun about Checo being small compared to Lance Stroll, and so therefore decided to put a side-by-side picture of Sergio and Lance and compared to next to me and Stephen. And obviously Stephen is taller, plus a 6 foot. I am below 6 foot, so we thought we would have a little fun on that. But that is not what you're tuning in to see. What you are tuning in to see is another track comparison video. Obviously last time out, the first time with me and Stephen on camera, we had the Battle of the Street Circuits with Monaco versus Singapore, and I think judging in the comment section by that one, Monaco won.
I concede that to Monaco.
Concede that to Monaco.
The history of it and this, yeah.
It happened.
Yeah.
But this week, we're trying to be a little bit topical,
Yeah.
a little bit relevant. Obviously, recently, the Chinese Grand Prix has been cancelled. A Grand Prix, a classic, one of heritage in the world of F1. Imola has been touted and put themselves forward to kind of host this Grand Prix. So what we do is we thought we would compare the Chinese Grand Prix and Imola, or the Autodromo Enzo Edino Ferrari.
You got all in there.
Sorry for murdering Italian. I apologise for that.
That was good.
Oh, thank you.
It was a mouthful, but it was good.
Yeah, we got there. We're good. It went okay. So what we will do is our usual in these kind of videos is we will give the stats around the track, and we are adding an extra category into what we did last year in terms of quality of racing, because I think in the street circuits we both kind of accepted that the quality of racing isn't necessarily what you tune in for the races for.
It's more about the individual.
Yeah, on that front. So,
Yeah.
Stephen, starting off, Chinese Grand Prix.
Yeah.
Give me some stats.
Okay, so it's been with us since 2004, which means there's been 16 races there. The most successful driver has been Lewis Hamilton, and of course he is the last winner there as well. The track length is 5.45 kilometers. There's a total of 56 laps there. The lap record there is held by Michael Schumacher in 2004. It was a 132.2. The maximum capacity of the track is 200,000.
Now we take a look at Imola, and when you think Imola, you think Ferrari, so not surprisingly that a lot of these stats are going to be Ferrari based.
Hence the t-shirt.
Hence
Topical.
the t-shirt. So it was first introduced in 1981 when Monza was going under refurbishment. It is actually within Italy, the Imola circuit, but it was called the San Marino GP because there was already an Italian GP and San Marino was pretty nearby. Works.
For convenience,
Indeed.
it worked.
It left the calendar in 2006 and it had 26 races in its time on the calendar. Its most successful driver, well, very conveniently, is a Ferrari legend, and that is Michael Schumacher, and he won at Imola 7 times. And he is also, funnily enough, the last winner there in 2006. The track length is a 4.95 kilometre, almost reaching the 5 kilometre lap. The fastest lap there is by Michael Schumacher in 2004, a very dominant year for the Ferrari, and it was a 1:20.4. And the total capacity, well, it kind of says maximum capacity, the figures we got were 60,000, so quite a massive difference between that and China. We didn't do speed trap this week. It will return when we go back on things, because I think around about that time they weren't really recording the speed traps as they were in currently day. But there is a look at the stats, and as you can tell, they're pretty different in theirs, although there is one common theme throughout, and that is Michael Schumacher in terms of has the fastest lap at both in that dominant Ferrari in the 2004. So we now move on to technical difficulty, and Stephen, do you want to describe or rate China's technical difficulty?
Well, I think we can both agree it's not too challenging on the driver. There's quite a lot of long corners, lots of straight, three long straights.
The main straight is kind of, and then it's the kind of the back straights, into the hairpin, and then it's
But then the corners and the straights aren't too challenging. It's quite a wide track, so it's quite lenient. But it's kind of, I'm trying to think of it's not very consistent. You're going into fast corners, short, slow corners. It's kind of, you have to quickly adjust. It's not, you can't get into good rhythm, I guess.
I think it's a lot of throttle control as well, in terms of the exit and being careful not to kind of lose the back end. A lot of ones knows. For Imola, again, I think both tracks aren't that technically challenging and demanding. I think Imola's skill comes in to be really quick at Imola, because it is basically a lap that is pretty much flat out. Italians, they love their speed. Bit similar to Monza, it's a longer lap than Monza, of course, but there are lots of kind of chicanes that kind of, a quick left into right through there, so a bit of braking. But yes, it is pretty much, most of the lap is flat out in terms of, it is just speed, and again, just, it's another one that's going to come in history, heritage of the sport.
It's always the history card.
And especially for Ferrari, it is a very historic track for them. A new category we're introducing this week, like we said, mentioned at the start, wasn't really necessarily too much point putting it with Monaco and Singapore, but we are going to add it into quality of racing, or the racing it produces. There we go. So quality of racing at China.
I think it's fairly good. It's quite, like I said on technical difficulty, it's quite wide. So it allows for that extra room of fighting side by side. In the DRS zones, give you plenty of opportunity to overtake. But I'd say it's good. It isn't spectacular. The last few years have been pretty...
The hairpin's pretty good. In terms of for overtakes as well, because it's a long straight, then it's a battle of late braking, isn't it, into that
inside,
corner.
outside.
But the first section is kind of not great for racing, is it?
Yeah.
So for Imola, for modern F1 cars, certainly I don't think it will be a very good racetrack, because cars are a lot wider, longer now, more difficult to kind of overtake on. Back to when it was on the calendar, the cars were smaller, more compact, and they struggled overtaking, I think, on that. I think where the quality of racing comes at Imola is actually one of those ones where it's following and the chasing, and the drivers finding the right point to try and overtake, and it's that intrigue. You certainly appreciate the skill of the overtake more than China. It's more kind of, you'll see more overtakes, but more of the artificial ones in kind
DRS,
of the DRS zones, where you really have to be brave. It kind of rewards the brave overtakes on tracks like Imola on a narrow track.
I think it wins on the overtaking quality.
Yeah, certainly does on that front. And so now we have the best qualifying lap. So for you, Stephen, what is the best qualifying lap?
It's a difficult one, because I think everyone's going to have maybe their favourite driver puts in a quality one. I think we both agree there isn't a one in your mind that you can go, oh yeah, that was incredible. A couple of highlights. Vettel's 2018 lap was pretty spot on. In the Ferrari, you could say Bottas's last year. Yeah, there isn't. Everyone's going to have their own personal take. I wouldn't say there's a spectacular one like at last week's episode where we had the Singapore Lewis Hamilton's, which was spot on. But yeah, China, I can't really. There isn't one that stands out for me in particular.
I think it's one of those tracks, isn't it, that it does lend itself to better racing, but because of the wide track limits, there isn't really many technically too difficult corners to kind of nail or really go on that front. That a flawless lap looks good, but it doesn't have like the excitement of a Monaco and Singapore because it's there. The qualifying laps obviously at Imola are a lot more exciting because it is, like I said, I think the challenge there is being really quick at Imola because it's a flat out and kind of maximising that pace throughout the length of the lap, because it is still quite a long lap at 4.9 kilometres. And the pole lap I'm going to talk about, not the 2004 one, I'm going to go for the last pole lap. So again, there wasn't really, when I was searching through, we're younger fans, so my memory of Imola, I do remember what will go on to one of my kind of the best race, I think there, was kind of the Alonso Schumacher battle in 2005 there, but it isn't too there, and I don't think you can really remember Imola at all.
No.
In terms of that, so it is kind of more going of what we read and kind of replays that we can watch of it. But I'm going to go with 2006 for just hearing that roar of the V8, the fact that it was the king of Imola, Michael Schumacher, in the Ferrari, you know, getting the last ever pole lap there as it currently stands, and you know, just roaring through, and it was a pretty flawless lap, and you just watch it, just hearing that Ferrari roar all the way through the lap was, yeah, pretty spectacular. So as always, I'll leave the link to the Vettel one for the China one and the Michael Schumacher one in the description below, as well as the kind of best race and the highlights. So the best race, Stephen, China.
So my best race is probably the 2018 Grand Prix, where good old Danny Rick almost didn't take part in qualifying because he had a few engine problems, but managed to start from 6th on the grid. Early doors in the race, Vettel was leading, then Bottas emerged as the dominant race leader, but then a few incidents happened along the way. The Toro Rossos took each other out, I think, and that brought on a safety car that brought Ricciardo and Verstappen back into the race. It was like perfectly timed, double stacking the pit stops. And then good old Verstappen took out Vettel, who was having a very good race. Opened the door for Danny Rick to do what he does, and that is overtake. And he did that all the way to first. And stayed there for the rest of the race, claimed victory. It was a kind of a classic honey badger performance. And he was the first driver since Schumacher to win as far back as 6th to win the Chinese Grand Prix. Schumacher did that in 2006.
Sticking with 2006. No, we're going to go back a year. My best race, obviously the qualifying was in 2006 with Schumacher, but my best race at Imola is going to be 2005. And now, obviously, like I said, people may have their other different ones. I remember this one, and for me, this is kind of Fernando. One of the ones where he kind of really raised his profile in people's eyes, in terms of Schumacher was starting lower back through the grid, and he started off pace. I believe, who was leading the race? It was Kimi Raikkonen who was leading the race before he had a retirement, I believe, on lap 9. Kimi had taken pole on the day, which then led to Alonso leading the race, and Schumacher got first caught behind Trulli, and then after the first pit stops got ahead of him and was able to then catch. After the second round of pit stops, got ahead of Jenson Button and was able to be just seconds behind Fernando Alonso. And then it was a fascinating battle on track and some fantastic defensive driving for Fernando Alonso to keep Michael Schumacher, the king of Imola, behind him. And it was, like I said in my kind of quality of racing, it's not necessarily the overtakes. Obviously a lot of those Schumacher ones were done on like undercuts in terms of the pit stops, But, you know, in terms of that battle, the intrigue on track, we had it a bit like Hungary, which is kind of, you know, not the widest and easiest track to overtake. But the Lewis Hamilton-Max Verstappen battle made that a fantastic race in itself, because sometimes you don't need the overtake. It's just seeing the skill of the drivers kind of follow each other so closely and battle. And it was a fantastic drive from Alonso and a superb drive from Schumacher as well. And great to see. Highlight.
So my highlights, as again, like last week, I have an honourable mention as to Michael Schumacher's final and 91st Grand Prix victory in 2006. Kind of, that was the record, yeah. Most wins. That was his final time he won. So I thought I'd give that a little bit of an honourable mention at the Chinese Grand Prix. But my main highlight is the birth of the torpedo. Nickname given to the one and only Daniel Kvyat by Sebastian Vettel after a particular incident on the first corner at the start of the race. Kvyat goes charging down the outside and it just causes carnage. The two Ferraris collide and yeah, it spelled disaster. And next race, after being nicknamed the torpedo, he then did something similar in Russia. And then after that, he lost his seat. Never recovered since, really. There was, yeah, well, he nearly got the Red Bull seat last season, but probably because of these incidents, he won't get a chance again. So there is the birth of the torpedo.
He certainly kind of went down in Helmut Marko, and I don't think Helmut Marko has ever really kind of regained that relationship with Kvyat since that incident that, you know, transpired to events that would follow.
It's an incident that's defined his career because no one forgets the nickname torpedo.
Nobody does. A bit like Grosjean in Spa 2012. Nobody forgets the race ban. And the highlight at Imola, and you know, the highlights you can say are, you know, Michael Schumacher's dominance there, and Ferrari, you know, just thinking it was another track, another one that the Tifosi absolutely loved and dominated at. And you know, you just think of Ferrari when you think of Imola. And low light, obviously, you have to go is obviously it was the last race of one, the late great, we spoke about him last week in the Monaco video, being the King of Monaco, was Ayrton Senna. And obviously it was the tragic accident in 1994 that was kind of a turning point in the sport in terms of safety, and the implications that kind of went on after that were huge. And obviously we lost a great and talented driver that you never know. Michael Schumacher won his first world championship in 1994. Ayrton Senna in a Williams that had dominated up until that point, although had struggled at the start of that season. You never know what might have happened in that year or what the future kind of holds in that thing and how it might have done. But yes, we tragically lost him. And also another kind of low light or a kind of sad foresight was the 1982 Grand Prix, and there was a protest around Formula One. There was a real kind of dispute between the teams and the governing body, I believe, at the time, which led to only 7 teams entering the 1982 Imola Grand Prix, and 14 drivers on the grid. And after early retirements from the 2 Renault drivers, Ferrari were basically left with no competition within the race, and Gilles Villeneuve, the Canadian driver, was leading, and his teammate Pironi was running in second. Now, to kind of make sure they didn't run out of fuel or kind of lessen the chance of mechanical issues, Ferrari told both their drivers to slow down. Gilles Villeneuve took this as, you know, I'm not going to, we're holding position, we're just kind of maintaining, racing's off the card. Pironi thought racing was still on the cards, and on the last lap, Pironi overtook his teammate and claimed victory for Ferrari at Imola. And, you know, this really upset Villeneuve, which naturally you would do. But, you know, we heard it very similar to kind of a situation like Charles Leclerc felt wrong in Singapore in terms of the pit stops and Vettel going on that front. You know, drivers in some situations, if they have an understanding of it, they kind of feel wronged, and Villeneuve felt wronged, and he said that he would never speak to Pironi again in his life. The sad news was that 2 weeks later, in qualifying at the Belgian Grand Prix, still not on talking terms with Pironi, Gilles Villeneuve lost his life. So he actually fulfilled his prophecy of never speaking to Pironi again in his life. But yes, tragically, at the pace of Imola, you know, the speed that it goes at, pretty much being a flat out lap, and with the safety not being great in those days, yeah, it was sad to lose a driver of the quality of Gilles Villeneuve, regarded as one of the top drivers of the time at that era. So yeah, that is my highlight, but kind of low light.
Low light.
But now we move on to conclusions. So, Stephen, concluding, best Grand Prix, Imola or China?
It's a tough one for me. I've stood here, I've given you the stats about China, I've given you the highlights, the racing, the quali, fine. But for me, China just isn't that special. I may have to concede to the card you love playing, the history of Imola, the speed, the giants there, the Schumacher. Yeah, I think I have to concede this one to Imola. How about you?
For me, China, out of the Herman Tilt tracks, I think this is one of the ones that have kind of struggled and come under the criticism of feeling a bit samey. And Malaysia, they were very close, and I think in the last times that they were on the track, they were actually back-to-back races, which probably aided to the similar sort of feeling on that front. But Malaysia, for me, was always the better Grand Prix, and it was disappointed, and I think a lot of people would like to see Malaysia return to the calendar in the future. With China, it kind of feels like in a barren land. It was the 1000th Grand Prix in F1, but there's nothing that kind of really stands out that's kind of iconic. Not even the kind of huge, I think it's like almost Heineken Tower. It has the sponsorship on the kind of start straight. It doesn't really, yeah, I think it will produce good racing. It probably produces the better in terms of if you like your racing kind of with lots of overtakes, I think it probably produces there, but it produces a lot of kind of artificial racing, and the best action point probably is that heavy braking hairpin.
Right at the end of the lap, yeah.
Yeah, for me, Imola, although not ideal, but with 2021 coming up, it may become more of an option. But the thing is, what China does have is it is a market that F1 would like to exploit. And obviously with Guan Yu Zhao being in the Renault Academy, we could potentially see a Chinese driver in F1, which would obviously secure China's place for a long-term future. So I think you're probably going to keep China. Imola, it has the history, it has the heritage, and it's a bit like Hungary and Monaco happened last year, where the excitement came in the race of not from the overtake, it was, will he overtake? Will Max Verstappen get past Lewis Hamilton? Will Lewis Hamilton catch Max Verstappen at Hungary? You know, it was just, with these things, it kind of very much felt like, yeah, it brings a different sort of excitement. But the question is, with Monaco, with Singapore, with Hungary on the track, it's already, you know, do we need another one like that? Maybe like an Imola to replace Hungary. China offers more kind of consistent and something a little bit different than what Imola offers. And also, like I said, Imola being an Italian race, we already have Monza, the Temple of Speed, the Tifosi have their heritage. If we had two of them, would it retract a little bit something?
Maybe dilute it, yeah.
Yeah, so for me, China is probably the mainstay, regular in terms of winning on that. Imola is probably the more special and more special to F1. I know a lot of kind of older F1 fans think very well of Imola, and you know, it's one that's kind of close to their heart as a circuit. Maybe as a one-off race, maybe as a feature race once every 2, 3, 4 years, maybe it might come in, or maybe for this, I doubt it would happen. But you know, if it came in for the slot where the Chinese Grand Prix would be, I think it would probably be a very good race that people would enjoy this year. But maybe we'll go opposites there. I think for the long-term future of F1, and you can probably build on it, and it's still making its history, China is probably the better one. So this is weird. We've both convinced the other one of the other track.
We should swap.
Oh yeah.
There we go.
There we go.
We're correct now.
We're correct. It's worked. But guys, that is it. That is another track comparison video. We hope you have enjoyed this video. If they're new around here, Stephen, or they haven't already, what can they do?
They can subscribe, and they can like, and they can ding that bell.
Ding that bell. And if you've liked this video, yeah, give it a thumbs up, like Stephen said, and you know, you can just let us know. It's good feedback.
Yeah.
Put a thumbs down if you don't like this kind of track comparison. It was a different one to do because they're very different in their own ways, so it's kind of interesting one to go on that. And make sure you comment down below on what you think is better, Imola or the Chinese Grand Prix. But guys, we hope you've enjoyed this video, and for now, you F1 fans, keep racing.